Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for the good ship SS tomorrow.
Welcome to the Boxing Day special of The Friendly Futurist, and today we're going to discuss the cybersecurity risk for that new gadget that you got under the Christmas tree this year. And welcome back to The Friendly Futurist and happy Boxing Day. And we don't usually publish on a Sunday, but I thought today might be a very appropriate time, not to scare you, but just to open your eyes a little bit and just see the potential for your new toy. Now, I know for a fact that one of the biggest demands for adults for Christmas this year was a fitness tracker. Now, fitness trackers come under the category of Internet of Things or smart devices. And today's guest is Sean Duca, and Sean is from Palo Alto Networks. He's the Vice President, and he's also the Regional Chief Security Officer for Asia Pacific and Japan. He's joining me over from the Sydney office early this year, and we have a chat about the cybersecurity threats we have from smart devices, particularly if you connect so many devices to your home Wi-Fi, how vulnerable you are from attacks from nefarious actors, both state and non-state, particularly non-state, black hats, cyber criminals, whatever you want to call them, and how much risk they are. And just make sure, and we're here as the duty of care, to report that we want you to be safe. We don't want your identity to be stolen, or worse still, your device has been used against you. So Sean will be joining us after the break. And welcome back, and today we're talking about Internet things and how vulnerable wearable tech is to cyber attacks. And we've got a special guest. We've got Sean Duca from Palo Alto Technologies over in Sydney. And Sean, welcome to the show. And first and foremost, can you just give us a quick rundown on what Palo Alto is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dave. So Palo Alto Networks is the largest cybersecurity company in the world. We help organizations, big and small, and governments around the world to really think about how they secure their data, their applications, whether it be something that they've got in their traditional sort of premises or moving out to public cloud, and really help people sort of continue to innovate and embrace technology the way that they should.
And of course, today we're chatting more specifically about the Internet of Things. And for the sake of those who might be a little bit of a technophobe and to clued up on what this means, what does Internet of Things mean to the average guy on the street?
Yeah, so to the average person, Internet of Things really is around any type of internet-enabled device. So think about it right now. We've got, they say that in the home that we've probably got about 25 connected internet-enabled devices. And that could be everything from enabled smart TV, could be a mobile phone, your Fitbit, Apple Watch. Any type of device that has got an internet connection is effectively considered an IoT or an Internet of Things device.
Good stuff. And how vulnerable is wearable tech to cyber attacks?
Yeah, so look, when it comes to any type of wearable tech, vulnerabilities can exist in anything. Whether it's a piece of software, whether it's a piece of hardware that you've actually got, it's always going to be a point in time where you say, how do we actually manage an update to these systems? Software is created by humans at the end of the day, and people are going to always poke and prod. Someone's going to potentially, create some sort of mishap in terms of their actual coding. So we're constantly always going to see these bugs popping up and vulnerabilities. And effectively, we're just trying to work out how do we close that off. So it's possible to appear in any type of wearable tech, or any tech for that matter.
And which devices are more vulnerable than others?
So look, it's always a hard one to say what's more vulnerable than others, but I think at the end of the day, you've always got to think about it that the more people start to gravitate towards a particular thing. So let's just say, it's an automatic pet feeder as an example. If, millions or billions of people are actually using pet feeders, the law of averages would say that a cyber criminal is always going to target that particular device because that's where the masses have moved to. And that's not to say that the pet feeder itself is necessarily vulnerable, but you've got a lot more eyes staring at it and trying to poke and prod it as well. And naturally, when you've got the vulnerabilities, we've got to try and work out, well, Does the automatic pet feeder provider or the technology provider, do they also frequently update the device? Can it be updated? And if so, is it invisible to the user, or the user has to go off and do 27 things to actually get it updated? Because if we're relying on people to do things automatically all the time, that's where we're going to start to see some cracks slip through. And obviously we see these vulnerable devices popping up.
Yeah, and of course, they asked, because with everyone working from home these days, I think we're more vulnerable than we were before.
Absolutely. So right now, to a large extent, I'd say that we are moving further and further down that path of having a greater dependence on technology. With the pandemic, we wanted to get connected. So we're even more connected now because of the technology that's actually there. So we're using devices a lot more. We've probably got a lot more screen time as well. And when you start to think about us sitting around, we're buying technology, we're doing internet shopping, we're buying smart light bulbs, we're buying heart rate monitors, we're having connected gym devices, coffee machines, take your pick of what type of device, and they're all becoming internet enabled. And I think the stat right now is that we've probably got about 10 billion internet enabled devices. And that's something that we've been growing, obviously, for all these years. And it's predicted that in the next few years, we're probably going to end up hitting it close to 50 billion devices.
Wow.
So whatever we've done in the last, let's just say 20, 30 years, we plan on actually going 4 or 5 times more of that in the space of the next 5 to 10 years. So you just think we're going to see this dramatic shift of more devices being internet-enabled and connected.
50 billion devices for, 8 billion people? That's incredible.
Yeah, well, think about it right now. So the average house, they say, has about 24 internet-enabled devices. I talked to some of our technical guys, and obviously they're always the curious type and are watching to see what are all the internet-enabled devices on their home. Some people are saying 24. That was probably what they did years ago. And some have got 30, 40. So there's a lot out there.
Wow, it mind boggles. And on the subject of remote workers, do employers have a duty of care for good cybersecurity for the hybrid workforce?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. So I think there's always an element of duty of care to work at, and firstly have an understanding of what are the devices that are connected to your network. And when we are remotely working in this hybrid world that we are we connecting some of these devices that the organization hasn't necessarily selected or knows about? Are we potentially connecting those devices to our corporate network? Right now I've got an iPad, I've got a laptop that's corporate issued laptop, I've got my own personal phone. These are devices that go with me anywhere and everywhere. I've got an Apple Watch. So again, there's an element where an organization needs to think about, well, are these sanctioned devices? And if they're not sanctioned, because obviously that could be a bit of a policy, does the organization know if I plug this device into the network? And if I've got one of my a pet feeder because I decide to take my dog into the office or something like that, is that potentially opening up an organization and exposing it? And what we found from a recent survey that we really conducted was that 78% of the respondents that came back really said that they had seen an increase of non-business IoT devices connecting to their corporate network. So we're starting to see this proliferation of these devices coming into the workplace, whether it's a remote worker or whether it's someone physically walking into the office, now that we're starting to see the world open up a little bit.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And what are some of your good tips for good cyber hygiene?
Look, I think the key thing is that we should always think about, and whether it's, and I'll put this in the context of the user, the remote worker, the office employee, get familiar with your home router. And I know that sometimes people just go, what's that device? But think about the device that you actually got given or provisioned to you by your service provider or telco. One, is it using a secure, does it have some sort of security? All of them have some sort of username password. Make sure that it's not using something like admin password. Try and actually secure it a little bit more. If there's any security functionality and features that are on there, usually there's a concept called WPA, which is really around sort of that wireless protection access environment. It would be like WPA2, WPA3. Try and use WPA3, which is a more secure means of encrypting the traffic that's actually out there. The other part would be keeping track of the devices that are connected. Find out who's actually trying to get an IP address. What are those wireless devices that are actually out there? And one, ask yourself, are they all your devices? Or have you got some next door neighbor or someone that's maybe inside your apartment block that's potentially using your internet access and getting access to your network? Because once they're in, they can start to get access to other devices that are on your network and potentially even your devices that you've got, your corporate issue devices. Where possible, I would always believe that there's an element of segmentation. And what segmentation is, how do I start to segment my network in such a way where I've got some devices that are a little bit more sensitive from others? In a corporate environment or an organization, we try and segment to make the job, try and sort of reduce what we call the blast radius. If someone was to hit one machine, have they now got access to everything else that's there? When I think about it from a home user, I would not want to have my toaster, my TV, and my corporate sort of issued laptop on that same network? Is there a way that I can sort of break that up somehow?
Yeah.
Always look to see that you create that sort of that gap there.
Fantastic, and some good advice there. And I think it's just, sometimes use some common sense. I think that might be the...
Always. And I think that the thing that we've always got to pay attention of, in a traditional sort of organization, we have always had that notion of there's the IT team, there's the security team, they're protecting us, they're protecting the organization. The reality is we've all got a role to play, whether it's inside the office or even if it's something at home. We need to be thinking about, what else is happening around us. When we walk down the street, we've always got our sort of two eyes and our two ears that are sort of in tune with what's going on around us. Kind of have that same logic when we are doing something at home, because there is always going to be someone that's going to poke and prod and try and get access to something you've got to value.
Absolutely. And Sean, as this podcast is about the future, how do you see where smart devices are heading in, say, 5-10 years' time?
Look, I think in 5-10 years' time, kind of as I said, I think we're going to start to see a lot more stuff. And that sort of a lot more stuff is really around those internet-enabled devices. It's proven that people are starting to see some value and productivity gains of using more devices. We're seeing concepts like smart cities that are really based on a lot of these IoT devices that are effectively acting as sensors. They're going to be making our lives a little bit easier, make it easier for us to use public transport, health services, and the like. So I think we're going to start to see a lot more connected devices. You and I could start up a brand new company and a brand new internet-enabled device, and we create our own thing. For anyone that's a budding developer or someone that's got a great idea, you want to make sure that if you do create this software that's running on these things, that there is a way that you could actually update them. There is a way that we could securely provide some means to sort of get those updates, because that's unfortunately the part that's lacking for a lot of these devices. So I think we're going to just start to see this exponential growth of more devices, like the volume and velocity that's going to sort of increase. I think with that, we're going to potentially see this volume and velocity of cyber attackers and their willingness to really go after these devices. So again, if we're collecting information, it's up to us to really think about protecting it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we'll see the robot uprising anytime soon, but...
Absolutely.
And finally, mate, what else is driving your curiosity?
Look, for me, it's, I'm a technologist at heart, so I'm really big in trying to work out, what's out there, what's around the corner. And sometimes it's not just the new shiny toy, the flashing lights, or something that's new and amazing. I'm a big fan of, if you've got something, how do you extract as much value as you can out of it? So anything that I'm going to see that's going to, make my life a little bit easier or better, take the example of a, kind of like your Fitbit, your wearable type of watches, and so the Apple Watches of the world. Use it, extract value out of it. That for me is where you could start to get that curiosity really sort of, peaking to maximum levels, because I'm actually starting to, my life revolves around that. I bought an Apple Watch a while back, and I always used to say, I'm just going to use this for exercise and monitoring my sleep. And now it's got, kind of a permanent fixture on my hand at the best of times. So just trying to get value out of it. Otherwise, it becomes just a piece of sort of useless technology.
Yes. And finally, where else can we find you?
Yeah, so paloaltonetworks.com is always a great place to sort of land, to understand, the technology we've got out there, and sort of find out what we've got, some tips and tricks around, securing yourself at home. For myself, obviously a big user of LinkedIn, Twitter, so people can always contact me there and ask questions as well.
No worries, Sean. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you this morning.
Cheers, no worries. Thanks, Dave.
No worries. And thank you to Sean. And I'm sure that you've got lots to learn today, and I really opened up your eyes. And remember, having a smart device, that latest gadget, is a cool thing, but just like all things, just safety first. Remember, I'm the friendly one. I'm not here to warn you and say, don't do it. Just be cautious. So I want you to be safe. Now, we've got a bit of a bonanza with terms of publishing this couple of weeks. So on Thursday, normal publishing day, we have got Humpty Calderon. He's Chief of Communications from Ontology. We're going to talk about OntID, which is a blockchain-backed digital ID, and it's like for credit scores and other things that you can use in Web 3.0, which I think is a very fascinating concept. So listen out for Humpty. And on New Year's Day, very special guest. Earlier in November, I sat down and recorded with Professor Peter Klinken. Now, Peter Klinken is the Chief Scientist of Western Australia. And we're going to have a huge chat about my home state's potential, particularly with regional areas, with carbon capture, renewable energies, and even space technology, which is really fascinating stuff, and I hope it's inspired you. And as the borders open up, we need academics, we need entrepreneurs, and I hope this gives you so much inspiration in the turn of the new year 2022. Now, The Friendly Futurist is a Podcast West production. It's been produced by me, Dave Monk, edited by Alvin Rossana. If you love this show, please follow us on your favourite podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Amazon Music, wherever you find a good podcast. Please make sure you subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss out on an episode. And whilst you're there, please leave us a 5-star review to help us be more discoverable and get the word out further to like-minded future heads who have a shared innate curiosity like me. Now, if you really love the show, you can donate via Buy Me a Coffee, details in the show notes, and have a read out for my new, soon to be relaunched, I know I've been a bit slack with newsletters lately, but relaunched newsletter about what I learn every month that's coming out in January 2022. Until next time, friends, remember to stay curious and the future is user-friendly.
Another Podcasts West production.